Hey guys, my name is Gabby, welcome back to my channel, and today I'm going to be filming my November wrap-up. I wanted to apologize for the weird lighting in some of my recent videos, but if you can't see from behind me, I've moved into my new apartment, and it's been a struggle trying to figure out where I get really good natural lighting in this apartment, and apparently my room is not one of them, but I am getting professional lighting ordered off of Amazon, so hopefully it'll be here before a lot of my upcoming videos in December. Let's just jump into what I read this month. Even though this was one of the busiest and most hectic months of my life, which I know I say a lot, but like seriously, I moved this month. It was fucking crazy. So even though it was a crazy busy month for me, I did manage to read 7 books, which isn't like a ton, and 2 of them were poetry collections, so it's like I only technically read 5 books. So as I said, I read a total of 7 books, which amounted to this many pages. I did not calculate this before I filmed. For the amount of genres I read this month, I read 2 poetry collections, 2 romances, 1 historical fiction, 1 thriller, and 1 contemporary fiction novel. For the amount of ratings I gave, I only had 1 5-star book this month, which I made a book talk for, so it's probably not too hard to figure out which one it was. And then I had 2 4-star books, 2 3-star books, 1 2-star book, and 1 1-star book. Yep, another 1 star. It happened. Alright, and then as far as male versus female authors go, I only read 1 male author and I read 6 female authors. Let's talk about the books I read. So the very first book I started with this month is Until the Last Star Fades by Jaqueline Middleton, and this was sent to me by the author for review. This is a contemporary romance that follows this girl named Riley who goes to NYU, and she's in New York, and she is dating this hockey player that she's been dating for like ever. Then when she's on the airplane back to New York, she meets this guy named Ben who's a low-key actor, and he's British, and he just kind of sweeps her off her feet. And then it's like this love triangle scenario happening between Ben and her hockey boyfriend. And to be honest, this book was okay. Like, I wasn't a huge fan of the romance, of like either of the romances. I wasn't like super hooked into this love triangle. And I do think that this book is way too long for what it is, which tends to be the case with Jaqueline Middleton novels. I think they're always like really long. Like, this is almost 500 pages. I did enjoy the mother-daughter relationship that Riley had with her mom in this book. I thought it was like the best part of the story. But as far as Ben's character, I just didn't really care for him, and I thought that their dialogue, like Ben and Riley's dialogue, was really cheesy and felt kind of forced. This one was just okay, but it's like not one of my favorite romances, but it wasn't that bad either. So I ended up giving this one 3 stars. It was alright. The second book I picked up this month is For Better and Worse by Margot Hunt, and this was one of my November Book of the Month picks. I think it's funny because in my November TBR, I remember saying that this was the one I was most unlikely to get to this month because I really wanted to get to the other 2 first, and this is the only Book of the Month book that I actually read this month. So this one is a thriller that follows these 2 lawyers. It follows them when they meet, when they're in law school, and their names are Will and Natalie, and they meet in law school, and when they meet, they kind of joke about how they think that they could get away with murder if they really wanted to do it, just because they know the law so well, and they know all the mistakes that criminals tend to make, and they think that they could get away with it if they ever attempted it. And then this actual story takes place years and years later. I want to say like around 10 or 15 years later, when they're married and they have a son, and something happens with their son that actually makes them want to attempt murder and see if they can get away with it. And it's so fucking crazy. This book was so entertaining and fun to read, and actually got a lot darker than I thought it would get. Like, there is some trigger warnings for some shit in this book, so if you don't want to get spoiled, I'll put a link to my Goodreads review where I talk about more of the trigger warning spoilers. Oh my gosh, this book was just so intense, so entertaining, and just a lot better than I was expecting it to be. Like, I just really loved both Will and Natalie, and I felt for them, and just, oh my gosh, like, the situation they were put in as parents is like so impossible to imagine. And so I really enjoyed this one. I ended up giving it 4 out of 5 stars, and I thought the ending was also very awesome. The third book I read this month is This Is How It Always Is by Laurie Frankel, and again, this was my only 5-star book this month, and I did make a full book talk talking about this book, so I'll put the link in the description for my book talk if you want to see all of my thoughts and crazy feels and me cry over this book, because I low-key almost cried in my book talk. Basically, this book is a contemporary fiction novel, and it follows this family who has 5 sons, and the youngest son says that he wants to be a girl when he grows up. And it's about the family you know, accepting her for who she is, and they have to move out of their small town to Seattle, which is like a more accepting, liberal place. They decide to keep it a secret from everyone in Seattle. Like all of the new people that they know, they decide not to tell them that she was previously a he, and it ends up blowing up in their faces, obviously. But this is just such a powerful story, and the way that this book talks about gender dysphoria and just all these things that I don't personally think about on a daily basis, but like it's just really powerful to me, and it's very thought-provoking and introduced me to a lot of new ideas and things that I just don't really think about, like hormone blockers and just a lot of things that I didn't really know existed. Oh, this book was like a punch to the emotional gut. Like I just loved it so much, and I cried so much, and it was just beautiful. So easy 5 out of 5. Right, so the next 2 books that I read were both poetry collections, and so the first one I read was The Witch Doesn't Burn in This One. I read this one because I really enjoyed this author's previous poetry collection that was called The Princess Saves Herself in This One. I actually read this poetry collection last November, so I was really looking forward to reading this one because I know her poems tend to be very like feminist and just like powerful, you know. This one I thought was okay. This collection, like some of the poems I did think were really powerful and really feminist and like almost brought me to tears. Some of her poems just kind of felt like angry towards men poems and like hateful towards men poems for like no reason, and I kind of feel like that's like the opposite of feminism, you know. But I did really like those statement poems that were about like how to prevent getting sexually assaulted and then how to prevent sexually assaulting someone. I thought those were really powerful. I just enjoyed the first collection of poetry a lot more than this one, so I ended up giving this one 3 out of 5 stars. Like it was okay, but there were some poems that I didn't really like. And then the next collection of poetry that I read was The Dark Between Stars by Atticus, and I read this one because I really enjoyed his previous collection of poetry, Love Her Wild, which I also read last November. Apparently November, I'm just like in a poetry mood. This collection of poetry was so bad. It was so uninspired, cliche, bland. It was just so disappointing because like I loved his first collection, Love Her Wild. I purchased the book, I gave it 5 stars. It's like one of my favorite poetry collections. But then this one, The Dark Between Stars, it's like the most basic shit. Like let me read you some of these poems. The prettiest eyes sparkle from the inside out. And that's the whole poem. The next one says, it's always safe to do nothing when it rains. The next one says, I've always loved lavender. It's purple in all the right places. So yeah, I mean, this collection was filled with a lot of poetry like that. A lot of it was just so basic and so like dumb. I was irritated how almost every poem mentioned Europe in some way or another. It's like, we get it, you really like Europe, but it was just very repetitive, and I liked his first collection so much more, so I ended up giving this one 2 out of 5 stars. It was just not for me. Alright, the 6th book that I read this month is Fight or Flight by Samantha Young, and this was sent to me by Berkeley and Penguin Random House for review. Oh my god, this was a fucking hot mess of a book, and I don't really know how anybody could enjoy this book. This is a new adult romance. It follows these 2 extremely spoiled, privileged, rude as fuck main characters. The main character, Ava, she is like waiting in line to get her ticket up to first class. Like she's waiting at the airport, she's gonna get her ticket moved to first class, even though she's already complaining about how she has so many bills to pay because her apartment in Boston is $4,000 a month and she has to wear designer shoes or her employers won't take her seriously. While she's waiting in line, the main love interest dude cuts her off, like hits her with his bag on the way passing her to get the last first class ticket. And oh my god, if God forbid, if neither of them can fly first class, it's like the end of the fucking world. He gets the last first class ticket, and then of course their flight gets delayed and canceled and whatever, and so they have to both be put on a new flight where they both get first class, and then they get sat right next to each other, of course, because this is a romance novel. He's literally one of the most obnoxious douchebag characters I've ever read. Like, oh my god, how could anybody like this? He's so rude to her and he's so ill-mannered. And then it's like so obnoxious because she refers to him as a Viking literally every 5 pages, and because he has like a Scottish accent, the author decides to write everything in the sound of a Scottish accent, so everything is misspelled and you're trying to like figure out what he's saying. Every time he says the word to, like T-O, it's written as T-A-E. God, I could not stand these fucking characters. I gave this book 1 star and I DNF'd it, and it's like literally one of my least favorite books that I've ever read, so Alright, and the last 7th book that I read this month is The Broken Girls by Simone St. James. This is one of my book of the month picks from a couple months ago. This is one that I've been wanting to read for a really long time. It's a thriller / historical fiction novel, and it follows this journalist named Fiona in 2014 who is investigating this boarding school that was supposedly haunted back in the day. What happened was her sister was murdered on the site of this boarding school, and so she's trying to like look into the history of the school, and then we get to follow in alternate chapters, we follow the girls who used to go to the boarding school, and there's this whole mystery around her death, and there's this girl named Mary Hand who haunts this boarding school. There's rumors that like she was a previous student at the school, or she was buried on the grounds of the school, or like there's this whole suspicion around this Mary Hand girl. And oh my god, you guys, this book was so creepy and so like atmospheric of like a haunted boarding school. It was just so perfect for this time of year. Like, I really recommend to read this book for like a Halloween spooky read. It was so spooky and amazing, and I read this book like late at night while it was like pouring rain outside, and it just totally like set the vibe. I was like so freaked out. I was really impressed with this book. I had a really fun time reading this, and I ended up giving this one 4 out of 5 stars, and like the only reason it didn't hit a 5-star for me is just because it was missing that like extra something to give it that 5 stars, you know? Like, I thought the ending of this book wrapped up really nicely, but I would have really liked a shocking, crazy ending for this book, I guess. And I don't know, I really enjoyed this book. It was a really fun time, so yeah. Those are all of the books that I read this month. Let me know if you've read any of these books, what your thoughts are, and what your favorite book that you read this month was, or your least favorite book that you read this month was. I'm very, very close to 10,000 subscribers. I'm only like 40 away now, I'm pretty sure, but I was wondering, like, when I hit 10,000 subscribers, like, should I do another Q&A like I did when I hit 7,000, and like, if so, what are your thoughts on that? Do you want to see another Q&A from me, or are you like, I'm good? Yeah, just let me know what you're thinking. And oh my god, you guys, December is just around the corner, and December is honestly my favorite time of year to do videos because there's so many videos for the end of the year that I'm so excited about. I started writing a list last night, and I have like 14 or 15 videos that I have to put up in December, so like, you're gonna be seeing this face a whole lot more. So get ready for that. Thank you guys so much for watching as always, and I will see you guys soon with a new video. Bye.